It's true. Law is common to every species on this planet, not just humans. Take a look at the monkeys in the jungle. The monkey king. The concept of leader is one key principle of law, and man copied that from the animal world. The monkey king ensures the protection and the defense of his troop. And he's appointed by the troop to defend the territory. And in order to do that, he can create a system where he and his followers take steps to preserve its sustenance, the troops. Take a look at the family dog. He has a strong territory that he protects. Concept of territory, just like the concept of leader, mankind copied from the animal. The dog protects the particular area, day and night. Every dog has that territory concept. Not just your family dog, every animal species on this earth has the concept of territory, where he takes steps to protect and defend the territory. Why would an animal look for a territory? For his own safety, for his own survival. The very reason the man creates countries. So the concept of leader, concept of territory, we copied from the animal world. They were systems. Look at the birds flying in the sky. Birds can fly huge distances by working together. They create a system where the bird flying in V shape, right? The leader bird has the effort to put an extra effort in, flight. The birds flying behind has the updraft to help them. So what happens every now and then? The birds at the back take turns taking over from the leader, taking turns, ensuring a longer flight. The V flight helps the birds to prevent themselves from attacks. It helps them to, survive against the elements. So they work as groups. They're all systems for survival. Whales travel thousands of kilometers, and whales have an elaborate language, immensely complex communication system, which the humans are still yet to fully understand. And yes, they also have this pod concept, the pod of whales, the group functioning together for their safety and survival. Look at the lion. The lion king, the one male lion and the female lions and the cubs. That makes a pride of lions in the forest. And what's the duty of the lion king? The protection and the defense of the pride. Food, well, that's the duty of the lady lions. The lion king joins the food hunt only if it is a must, maybe to go after an elephant or a giraffe. Other times he eats first, but he's not the one who hunts. His duty is the defense, protection. And, lion pride takeover is a very brutal thing. One day the lion king becomes weaker. On that day, at that time, perhaps an outer lion may come to attack the resident lion. Animals don't fight each other full fight. They actually basically threaten each other. They don't go full Monty. So if the resident lion gives up the fight, he just leaves the pride. Then the new lion comes and takes over the pride. Then what does he do next? He kills the babies of the former lion, one after the other. It's brutal. Then he creates his own babies. The pride survives. Pride carries on. Law is a system that the animals use for survival. And for the sake of survival, animals go into extreme lengths. And you can see how your dog fight an intruder into the territory. This concept of survival is one that the mankind got the hang of when he moved from African savanna. That's where the original man got created into the Northern African, Central Asian regions of, the Euphrates, Tigris, Nile and all. They are the man for the first time settled rather than being the hunter-gatherer. There he developed the concept of animals, what he copied from the animal world, right? The leader concept, the system based on that, and the territory, creating a territory for the defense of his needs. And that's how the so-called human civilizations began about 10,000 years ago. Along with it came very elaborate laws like the Hammurabi Code, one of the oldest of laws in existence, made by man. But remember, man did not make the law. It came from the animals. He copied it from the animals. So this is literally about 4,000 years ago. Cultures came, in fact, after laws. Law was the first system man created for survival. Thereafter, only cultures came, the religions, basically 6,000 years old. Art and craft, maybe that perhaps a little bit older. And then the mathematics, 8,000 years old. Language, around 10,000 years old. These are newer concepts, most of the human cultures. Law predates all of them. Because if not for law, mankind would not have survived from, the earlier days, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, or whatever. System is a prime requirement for any species to survive. System is the law. And law is pretty much dependent on the needs, requirements. This is in Singapore, right? Extremely strict set of rules to prevent better social habits. Some countries have very odd laws, like, if a chicken crosses the road, you can punish the owner. Scotland, right? A drunken man cannot go with an ox. Some countries, to create better image, better attitude among the people, even frowning is a crime. Okay, do not honk in order to save water. And, some highly congested cities where the dogs are kept, the laws are definitely set to make sure that the dogs are given exercise. Victoria province, Victoria state of Australia had a law until very recently where a change of a bulb requires a specialist, an electrician. So technically a person at home was not allowed to do that. So odd laws are plenty. Bubblegum ban. You can't keep rats as pets in Alberta. That's in Canada. Right? Georgia. Illegal to let a hen cross the road. Georgia is in America. Dubai, highly cleanliness conscious. If you keep your vehicle dirty, you'll be punished. Sri Lanka, right? There were a couple of cases, so a couple of police actions with regard to the so-called blasphemy against Buddhism, right? There was a case of, woman being arrested for having a cartwheel image in a dress, or a foreigner taking a selfie with Buddha-like, right? China, the Winnie the Pooh is an issue in China because the present leader of China appears to be looking like Winnie the Pooh. So maybe that's what perhaps he's thinking. So even the latest of Winnie the Pooh movies are banned in China. In Poland, they banned Winnie the Pooh because he's not wearing anything underwear. That's how different cultures look at things in a different ways, different societies. So in order to make sure certain things are done as a rule, they get the use of law. Take a look at Sri Lanka. Kandyan law, we had extremely elaborate environmental laws in Kandy, probably the most strictest in the world, in the ancient world. Kandy had this elaborate Kandyan homestead gardening system where the king would prevent people from cleaning the canopy. You had to grow under the canopy. It was illegal to cut any tree. And Kandyan homestead gardening system is unique in the world. Still being practiced by the people, where we do not clear up the land for cultivation. We kind of cultivate under the canopy. Take a look at the systems of marriage in Kandy. We had the Diga and the Binna system. And then there were more. We had this polygamy as well as polyandry. What's polygamy? One husband, multiple wives. Well, that's not exactly uncommon in the ancient world. But Kandy had an uncommon practice, even in the ancient world standards. We had polyandry. What is it? Single woman, multiple husbands. What's the need for it? Again, the first picture will give the clear understanding. Kandy is rolling hills where land is extremely less because of the geography of the land. So it's common practice. It was then in Kandy for multiple families to use the same land. If I give an example, okay, 2 or 3 brothers in the same family would use father's land without dividing it, because division of a smaller land could create, poor yield in the land. Land would become impractical. It would not be helpful. So the trick that the Kandiyans used in the ancient times was that 2 or 3 sons in the same family would have one wife. So that was the creation of the Mahagedara system, to prevent the division of the family property, prevent the cutting away of a family, to put a family together. And if you take a look at your surnames, you would see most of us are products of the Mahagedara system. Polyandry was very common in the Kandyan Kingdom. Why would Kandy went for polygamy? Reason was, there was immense attrition during the Portuguese and the Dutch eras in Kandy. Even during the early British times, there were about 30 to 40 big confrontation with the foreign powers, resulting in huge amount of deaths naturally. So with the deaths become the next realities, the destitute families. Kandy did not have a huge population, so there was a need to protect the population. So any family whose husband would be dead would have a right to be taken care of by the husband's family, husband's brothers or others related to husband. By law, by legally being responsible for a family, there's only one way: marriage. So that's how the polygamy came into being. They were all necessaries for the survival of the Kandyan Kingdom. And Kandy had extremely tough laws with regard to various offenses. There were more than 200 or so offenses where if you commit them, the result would be death. Under Kandyan law, it was a duty of the village to take care of the women, children, and the elderly, and the physically or mentally impaired. If they get into trouble within the village, the king would punish the entire village. Mountain kingdoms are extremely rare in this world. Very, very few existed. And Kandyan Kingdom lasted until the last moments. Kandyan Kingdom did not collapse. Right? It lasted on only because of the treachery of the chieftains. Only it finally ended up in the hands of the British. So these systems helped Kandy to survive. Some of the remnants of the system we can still see. Election of the Diyawada Nilame, only men can vote, women cannot vote. It was not from the early Kandyan era, it was developed later during the British era. Diyawada Nilame was not a powerful position during the Kandyan king's times. Later his powers, kind of ballooned up after the end of the Kandyan Kingdom to make him look like a king. And we still have the practice, but not from the Kandyan times, but from, early times, where only the men can vote for the appointment of the Diyawada Nilame. Jaffna, Tesavalame law. You cannot enter another person's land unless with his permission, but under Tesavalame law, you can jump into the neighbor's land to repair your Ola leaf fence. And the Tesavalame law gives other rights as well. It's an ancient law from the coast of Malabar. If you are to sell your land, you must first give the choice to the relations to make a bidding for the land rather than selling it to an outsider. You can sell your land to an outsider only after you give the first preference to the relations and the friends. Ancient customs for the purpose of survival. Law is not exactly what we must have. Law is exactly what we can do. Take a look at the road rules in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has one of the most dangerous roads in the world, probably, considering the number of accidents, 50,000 accidents, nearly 5,000 deaths, because ours is extremely different, diverse geography. Roads are narrow, extremely high number of blind corners are there, right? No amount of road development would help us reduce it. And people use a road very much. People come to the road to live in Sri Lanka. Their homes are all adjacent to the roads. So the gap between the road end and the house beginning is normally nothing. People walk all around the way of the road. That's how we are. We don't believe in the road rules. We think that the road is for us, for use. We have something like around 10 million vehicles. Okay, but we have 20 million people. So that careless use of the road is pretty much, we normally laugh at politicians for, abusing the road, but all of us abuse the road. We have to accept that. Sri Lankans' habits in the roads are extremely lax. And we don't want tough laws on the roads. So the police basically warn and send us off. Very few legal actions. Even if the laws are there, we are not practicing them. Traffic lights don't operate. Even if the lights are blinking, people don't follow them. Alcoholism. It was not an ancient practice of Sri Lanka, this kind of alcoholism. It basically came from the 16th, 17th centuries. But we are a highly alcoholic nation, and there are very few alcohol laws in Sri Lanka. We have tough laws against cigarettes, but not on alcohol. But of course, the laws do change this time. Look at the Constitution of Sri Lanka. We have changed it 20 times. Good or bad. Continuously, we have changed it from 1978. So almost every 2 years, there was a big change in the Constitution of Sri Lanka due to various reasons. Some changes are for the better. Well, as students, we were hammered by the teachers very liberally for smallest of mistakes, but the modern era, you do not see this kind of physical punishment on the children, either by the parents or by teachers. You changed. Better change, different changes in attitudes, learning, education, changes in era results in the changes of law as well. Now we have a big debate in Sri Lanka with regard to the Prevention of Terrorism Act, one of the worst laws of Sri Lanka. It's high time we remove it completely. No purpose of amendment, should be removed. Let's see what's going to happen. You can't expect a law to change a society. It's the other way that's more likely. Take a look at smoking. Sri Lanka was pretty much of a smoking nation, but then stricter laws came in the mid-1990s into the latter 1990s. Still, Sri Lankans do smoke, but the habit is kind of under control. Now, there are lots of laws on it, right, regarding marketing, advertising, promotion. Back in the days when, in the mid-90s, most of the sports in Sri Lanka were promoted by, the cigarette manufacturers, like Bristol and Gold Leaf. But those days are gone. Laws have come. Because the society was anti-smoking somehow, but the very society was not anti-alcohol, right? So we have strict anti-alcohol laws. Rights of the gay, lesbian, and other communities. We cannot call them the minority communities. Sri Lanka law is yet to discuss this. Still, the rights of that community is not yet regarded, but in many other nations in the world, that aspect has been taken into account. Use of weed illegal in Sri Lanka, except you are a Veda Mahatya. But now there's a talk, right? Maybe we can kind of capitalize on Sri Lankan wheat or what you get from Tanamallila. We'll see whether it's going to happen. Environment. There has been quite a few number of environmental legislations that have come up over the last 10, 15 years because nature is the best asset for any nation. There have been immense damage to the environment, of course, during the last 2 or 3 years. But the general tendency is having a stricter set of laws because society wants protection. International law, that's a plenty. That means a law for the world. Do we have one? There are a few examples. Take a look at, for Antarctica, there's a global law. Every country agreed to not to touch Antarctica for commerce purposes, economic purposes, only for research purposes. So Antarctica still survives intact from human violations. There are research stations, but that's it. Ozone. There was a huge issue with regard to the hole in the ozone layer. primarily due to the release of chlorofluorocarbons and methane and other gases. So there have been strict agreements since 1987, one after the other by the world, all the countries in the world, to prevent it from getting worse. So finally, the particular hole is now healing, becoming better and better. Idea is to close the particular hole that happens in the southern atmosphere by 2040 or 50. A global law. This is international sea lanes. Take a look at the sea lanes just south of Sri Lanka. Ships are free to navigate without being impeded by the local laws or the local forces. The government has a duty, government of a coastal state has a duty to protect the sea lane by giving freedom of navigation. That's a global law. Air traffic. This is a picture of the air traffic. So all over the world, so the air corridors must be protected. The plane has to fly within the particular corridor. If the plane deviates from the corridor, yes, the local nation may take some action, but corridor should be protected. Protection for the corridor, that means provisioning of the guidance, provisioning of safety, proper, safety control. That's the duty of the local country. Global law. Every ship that goes in the sea comes under one law, Hague-Visby rules, for the carriage of goods by the sea. Every single ship. We have around 10,000 plus carriers, right, in the world, right, taking immense amount of traffic. So all those ships traveling have to follow that particular law. Yes. So we do have global laws. This is undersea cables. Internet, most of the internet traffic happens through the undersea cables, and we have conventions and agreements to not to let it be damaged, but to protect it when it's in our seabed, when it goes under our local territories. Of course, the certificate of marriage, whoever gets married, whatever the country, it's globally accepted. So we do have global laws, more and more so, for the better, of course. Law is literally, yes, practical solution for a practical problem. We do have a lot of practical problems. The communication age, there's a lot that has to be discussed. The continuing epidemics, diseases. There are the health aspect, and then the damage to the nature, environment. There are huge things, because the damage in one part of the world could affect the other countries as well. So we are responsible to one another. When there were massive fires happening in Australia 2 years ago, it has an impact to the world. When there's a volcano eruption in Philippines, it has an impact on the world. Terrorism, we still don't have a solution, because terrorist to me could be a freedom fighter to some other place. Every terrorist everywhere is protected by some kind of government. That's a sad reality. We need a global law on terrorism. Internet still mostly free from legal regulations. There are certain controls, but not much. The rapid growth of internet is such that law cannot catch it. So there's huge area which is free from you. There's a whole new net coming we call it the dark net, completely free from legal scrutiny. And now the global cash is fast becoming free from international controls, bitcoins and all that. So it's a tough world. Space law, we have to come up with something, right? There's a huge need to clean up the space from debris. There's more than 400,000 debris floating around the world, from the space launches and all. We have to clean it up. And yes, Elon Musk could be right. We could be ending up in Mars. So we need a space law. Human rights, violation of is so common. Something has to be made, and we failed again and again and again on protection of human rights. This year is worse than the previous with regard to the global human rights, and the next year would be harder. So it's a sad story with regard to human rights. Diseases, pandemics, you fail this time without the, ability to have a global system. So we need solutions for these practical problems. Whatever the challenges, the laws cannot be blanket. That means, no law is there telling that this is completely bad. No, every law says this is not allowed, but okay, under these conditions, it's allowed. That's what the law is. So say murder is not allowed, but in certain situations, you can kill, let's say for self-defense, or something like for sudden provocation. So that's how a blanket law, a black and white law, is a dangerous law, because societies are different. So this is why in places, right, some things are not allowed, in other places the same thing is allowed. Yeah, you can't think of a scenario where everywhere it's not allowed. No. Who makes a law? Okay, parliament, courts, and of course international agreements. They do that. And law comes when the other concepts fail. This is UK. Amount of crimes. Immense number of crimes happens inside the UK. India. Nobody knows the number of crimes in Sri Lanka. The fact is, we have more than 3,000 homicides happening per year in Sri Lanka. That means 3,000 plus unexplained killings. Only few of them results in punishment. The rest stays undercover as cold cases. So ours is also a very criminal country. So the breaking of law is very common in the world. Show that injustice is a problem for the world. Law is not exactly justice, but injustice happens when there is lack of systems. System is a law. Law may not be the only solution, but it's a solution for the problems that we face.